extend my appreciation to Chief Commander Ralph and everybody here that's been so gracious and kind to me and welcoming me. You may not do that after this, but we can have that conversation later. My job here today is to tell you where you came from and what we've put in place for you guys and where we're going. And the second part of my job is to try to protect the organization as a whole, but make it affordable too. So, like Shirley said, there's some education. I think everybody's going to have some skin in the game with what we're doing and how we're doing it. But we'll get into that in a second. So, as Shirley said, I'm from Shelby Township, Michigan. I do have a boat on Lake St. Clair. It is a 340 Sundancer. I call it my happy place when I get to go out there and work and just hang out with my kids. And I do have adult children, so as most of you know, your adult children don't really want to hang out with you. So when I have a boat, they really want to hang out with me. So I get them on the lake, and then they can't go anywhere. So it is fun, it's enjoyable, and we do spend some family quality time there. The second thing I want to do is really thank Shirley. I can't tell you guys how many hours between Shirley, Ruth, and Mike that we've worked to put this together. You know, they've gone above and beyond. We worked late into the night, early morning. Didn't matter what we had to do to get this done. We did accomplish it. So I appreciate their efforts, because if I needed something that I didn't have, Shirley would get it to me within a few minutes. So thank you, Shirley. Please give her a round of applause. So let's talk about insurance, where you guys came from. You came from a policy that was very vague, ambiguous, and broad. What I'd like to do is ask a question of you guys. In the past few years, how many of you requested a certificate of insurance from your past broker? Okay. How many of you were asked what it was for? Okay. How many of you were told, no, I'm not giving you a certificate for that? Not one. Does that sound weird? Does that sound suspicious? Does it sound like it doesn't? Yeah. Well, all of you are very intelligent people, and I can't imagine that you believe that every single thing you did and everywhere you went, you were covered for. So that's because you came from a very vague, ambiguous, and there were no controls on what your last policy was. Now, not bad-mouthing anybody, I'm just saying that's where we came from. Thank God we didn't have a claim that they had to tell you that it wasn't covered. But we did have a claim. We had a claim that was about $800,000 worth of a claim. Now, was it in the scope of what you guys did? No, it wasn't. But they paid that because the policy was vague, broad, and ambiguous. And they just and then they canceled the policy. So what we did was we put a policy together that was more specific, less broad. It was more in line with your mission. Your mission is boating, boater education, boater safety. And we made it affordable. Shirley would probably disagree with me, but we can have that conversation later as well. The way we came about this is I received a call from a gentleman named Ron Babin from one of the Detroit districts. He had called me and said, hey, I need a policy for our local squadron. We've lost our local coverage and the national no longer covering us. And I said, okay, why aren't they covering you? And we got into that, and I said, I can do it. And he said, well, nobody's been able to do it. And I said, now I really want to do it. So he put me in contact with Shirley, and we got a lot of information, and we put it together. And she said to me, you know, what they're offering, what their current broker's offering is just to cover the national. And she said, it's unacceptable. We need to protect the districts and the squadrons. And that's exactly what we did. And we did it in the worst insurance market, arguably in probably the past 30 years. And if any of you know, all of your rates probably have gone up some way, some shape or form. So multiply that by 10. And that's what we're dealing with in this current market. And we're coming off a large claim and a cancellation. So the combination of that perfect storm brought us here. So what did we put into place? That's what everybody really wants to know, right? They don't want to hear me talk. What we did was we put into place a general liability policy that's not broad and not vague. It's very specific to teaching classes and to locations, okay? So if you're teaching a class and you're teaching it at the community hall, you fill out the form, you put the specific information that we need, and we'll get you a certificate of insurance. But it's very specific. It's not something that's going to be super broad. It's going to be to teaching classes. The next thing we put together was a general liability for marine and on the water training. Again, very specific, very to the point. It's for certified trainers at specific locations, bodies of water, or areas. Now, when we say certified trainers, we're talking about certified through the organization with credentials. We would need a resume. I think some of you have already gone through that. We've already approved many of you to do that. So, the last thing we did is we put together a policy that would cover you guys for your boat and trade shows. I know that's important to what you guys do. You set up booths, you pass out pamphlets, you try to generate membership. We have approved and sent out maybe 75 to 100 already. No issues there. So if that's something that you need, we'll provide all these forms, everything you would need to get these certificates. And then you'll be able to get those, and we'll email those to you, and you're done with those. What we couldn't do was put together a package that emulated what you guys had previously. And, well, we could have, but it would have been unaffordable, and it would have been impossible for the organization or anybody to afford it. So what I'd like to do is Shirley mentioned education. Going forward, there's some things I'm going to ask, and we're going to ask of you. Take what you've had before, forget everything you know about your past insurance and what you assume that you had coverages for. It's not an invisible cloak that just because we're a member of the U.S. Power Squadron and American Boating Club that we have a certificate that we can just carry around with us and say that we have coverage everywhere we go. Nobody has that type of policy. It's impossible to do in today's market. The other thing is I know that with this organization and many organizations, there's a national versus us. I can tell you I haven't experienced that. I'm an outsider. But I didn't experience that. They had all of your best interest in mind when we put this together. Again, making it affordable was a different thing, but keeping you guys and protecting you guys was really a priority from national. Let's not offer or ask for certificates of insurance if we're not asked for them. I'll tell you a story about a fine lady I spoke to a few weeks ago. She had called me and she said, I need a certificate of insurance. I said, what do you need? She said, I need a general liability certificate of insurance. I said, okay. Are you teaching classes? She said, no. I said, okay. Are you teaching on the water training? No. Are you doing any boat shows? No. I said, what are we exactly doing that you need a certificate for? She said, well, we're a small squadron. We don't do any of that stuff. We just meet once a week or once every couple weeks, and we go to different restaurants and have dinner. I said, when you walked into the restaurant, did they ask you for a certificate of insurance? She said, no. And I said, so why do you believe you need it? Well, I'm the member of the U.S. Power Squadron, and I think I'm entitled to have a general liability certificate of insurance. And I said, ma'am, do you understand that if I gave you a certificate of insurance and insured you to go to the restaurant, that every single person now that walked into that restaurant that day would be covered under that insurance policy? She said, I didn't realize that. I didn't realize I didn't need that. So I'm trying to give you an example of what we need to understand and what we need to do. If somebody's not asking for a certificate of insurance, you don't need one. And I think there's a big education portion here of what we really need and what we don't need. So I also think that there's a lot of things that the squatters do. Give you an example. Somebody called me about a flare. They were doing some flare training. The municipality asked them to do some flare training, and they had a bunch of people, and they insisted that they had a bunch of firemen. The FAA was warned. Police were there. They had ambulances ready to go. If the city's asking you to do that, then let the city take the liability for it. It doesn't make sense in order to protect the organization, we have to be careful of what we're doing and how we're doing it. Because I can promise you, in today's world, how litigious it is, everybody wants to sue everybody, and that's definitely a force that could really, really harm this organization. So I think we need to be conscious of what we're doing when we're asking for them. If you have meetings, have your meetings in a place that doesn't ask you for a certificate. Most places don't, unless you're renting a room. Meetings are kind of a gray area right now, because my definition of a meeting is different than a lot of people's definition of a meeting. Some of the meetings are turning into social events that serve alcohol, have food, and it's great, it's fun. I'm not saying don't do that, but when you take alcohol and mix it into this whole mix, it changes what an underwriter and what an insurance company looks at and how they believe that should be covered. And I also think that some of the squadrons should have some skin in the game. I think that there's a lot of stuff that we can put into place. Let's just say you want to have a meeting at a location. I just did one the other day for a gentleman, I think in Florida, here in Florida. They had 5 or 6 meetings a year. They had a location requested it. They were bringing in their own alcohol, serving food, and I think we got him a policy for that for all of his meetings for about $500 for the year. So I think that these things that are one-offs, which a lot of you do have some one-offs, need to be looked at individually. Instead of exposing the whole organization to the risk of some of these things that you guys are doing. Like Shirley said, you guys had a very broad thing, and now we've narrowed it down. Because a lot of the squadrons don't do a lot of the things that a full policy would cover. So you're paying for that when you shouldn't have to pay for that. So we've narrowed it down to the things that you guys do, and when these one-offs come, instead of paying for, because if we assume everybody's doing the same thing, then you would have to pay for all of them. So not all of you will be doing that. So these one-off things, we can get adequate coverage at a reasonable rate to cover that stuff. I had once, a long time ago, I had a college professor that said to me, into our class, he said, you must innovate and adapt. And I think we're at a point in this organization with insurance that we have to innovate and adapt. I don't think we can look back and see, oh, we had that, we thought we had that, we didn't have that, it doesn't do us any good. I think for us, we need to move forward. And for us to accomplish this, we have to innovate and adapt. And the insurance world is changing. The laws are changing, and I think that we need to do that as an organization. Do we have some, I want to answer some questions and then maybe take a couple.
If you have a question,
Yep.
fill it out.
Yep, fill out your card.
Hold it up, please, so I come by and pick it up. That's fine. The other one.
Yes, so I have a question here. Can we teach a webinar in the same space that we have designated for teaching? Absolutely. If you're teaching, it is covered. So, webinar, the various classes that you guys teach, as long as we get a request prior to teaching of the location, the name of the squadron, we can send you a certificate and you'll have coverage for teaching webinars, any type of class you're going to teach in that location. So our American Canoe Association instructors covered. We do training on a monthly basis. So on the water training is an area that we put some parameters on. There has to be a certification. There has to be several years of experience in teaching that. And we have to run MVRs for the particular trainer, because a lot of times your boating record or your boating tickets are associated with motor vehicle records in many states. If your state's not one, then we would have to figure out another way to do that. This canoe training, if it's not a certified class, if it's not something that we can put those type of parameters on, then it would be outside of that coverage that you're looking at. Right, so is someone teaching a squadron class in their home covered? Again, there's a parameter to that. It's at a house, you're teaching classes, you would have coverage. For a house, we would need specific dates as opposed to making it broad and just giving you a general blanket coverage for general liability. But yes, we could get that covered.
Could you clarify that? You could get it covered, or
No, it's covered. It's covered as long as we get this. It's covered as long as we get the certificate or the request. We need to have the details, the address, all the pertinent details, and for a home, it would be the dates, and that would be covered.
If we have a headquarters building, which we do you need a certificate for each class, or can we get something for the location?
Just the location is fine. We don't need, if it's an establishment besides a home, then we don't need the dates, we just need the location.
How long to process that?
It's usually 24 to 48 hours, it doesn't take long.
To follow up on that specific one, we use the senior center to teach our classes. We do an annual schedule, and we were told we have to do and request it for each individual class. We can't do it for the schedule year. is
No,
what we've been told.
who told you that?
Somebody in your office, my SEO called me all upset. Education.
So you're teaching the courses, correct?
Yes.
No, I don't need specific dates. I mean, if you want to include them, it's fine, but I don't need them specifically. If you're teaching classes at a location, we have the location, and you're actually teaching classes, that's all I need.
If we did several different locations, we have to get one for each location?
That's correct. That is,
So we don't have to have specific dates?
that is correct. Now again, let's go back to, are you being asked to provide a certificate of insurance? If you are, then that's fine.
Well, hi, I'm the head of the safety. We run the VSC, Vessel Safety Check Program. Every squadron is involved. What we do is we go out to a marina usually and board a boat and do a vessel safety check on that boat.
Gino, I'm going to cut you off because he's well aware of the vessel safety check program and what you do.
Okay, I haven't heard him.
So, what is your question?
What's covered?
Well, yeah, that's a little bit of a gray area as well, and we're looking at the marine liability portion of that. But I guess what's your specific question? What would be covered? Give me an example of what you're looking to be covered.
Well, say somebody falls off the boat. We blame the boater. Is there any coverage for us separately? And the big question is now is that a lot of the Marines are asking for certificates of insurance for us to actually go to the marina and do these vessels.
Yeah, and I don't believe that is the marina certificate's not going to be an issue. But we have to look at, why would you be responsible for somebody falling off the boat if you were doing a vessel safety check? If you fall off, general liability policy is not going to cover you regardless. General liability policy is for everybody else. It doesn't cover you specifically. It covers if you injure somebody. So, or if something you did causes injury to somebody. It would never cover you in that particular instance.
Do we have to get a certificate of insurance for every single marina and every state? Or
Yes, I think what I'd like to do is get back to you on that. I need to talk to underwriting on how they want to look at that.
If everybody please write your questions
Yeah.
on a card,
No,
and I will take questions.
it's fine. We
from
can
the
take
floor
them
right
as,
now.
we can take them as you want. It doesn't
Thank
matter.
you.
Can't hear it.
So is there coverage for social events? No. That would need to be acquired separately. And again, social events can range from anything from Christmas parties to just get-togethers. Those would need to have a special event policy for those. And again, they're not very expensive. We can do them for a few $100s usually.
For each social event,
I'm sorry?
for each social event, a few $100s.
Well, if we group, if you know what your social events are and we group them together, the rate would probably be better.
Okay, thank
And
you.
who pays that?
Squadron.
Your squadron would pay that. Yeah. So Christmas parties, picnics, and public parks, same thing. That's considered a social event. And again, I know social events are important and they're part of what you guys do to gather membership, keep membership. But you have to think about the risk that it involves and what could happen. And having that extra layer of protection with a special event policy is going to give you the proper coverage. Yes, so if your social event is at a restaurant or anything like that, you don't need a certificate of insurance. The establishment has general liability, they have liquor liability, they have all of that. And that's what I'm saying about education. If we're gonna have a social event, let's go to a location, if we could, that doesn't require that, because they're taking on the liability.
So to clarify, you went to a state park and you were doing vessel safety checks there in a state park and you already asked them for permission to do that. They did not ask for liability insurance. The state's going to be covering that. That's the clarification.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to take a lot of liability. And again, when we're talking about vessel safety checks, you're being invited aboard somebody's boat.
Yeah.
There's boat insurance, there's liability insurance, there's injury insurance on the boat.
No, there's not. No, there's not. Not all states have that requirement.
Well, a lot of states do.
Most do not.
Okay. Well, then I would suggest, so you're telling me you have a boat that has zero insurance on it?
There is not a requirement to have it.
Okay. How many of you boaters don't have insurance on your boat?
This is a different group. General public are not necessarily required to. Some states do have a requirement.
Okay,
but not all states
I
do.
just want to take a poll. How many of you do not have insurance on your boat? Okay, one.
People don't have a boat.
And that is because it's too old.
Okay,
No
so,
insurance, old boats over 20 years. Address that.
okay.
You don't insure smaller boats, which we generally don't have.
Anyway, most of you should have insurance. If you don't have insurance, I would suggest you secure some insurance. So when you're inviting somebody onto your boat,
But
that's not who the vessel safety checks are being done on. They're being done on general public boats, and we are trying to educate the general public boater
understand.
that don't necessarily have the insurance.
So we are working with the legal team to create some waivers. And I believe that this is a great situation where you should have a waiver signed. Somebody invites you onto their boat to do a vessel safety check, a waiver would be signed. And that would limit the liability that you have to people that don't have insurance on their boat.
And even if they have insurance, they're gonna come after us if we were the ones that caused the problem.
But again, give me a situation that would cause a problem.
I'll use an example of myself. I fell into the engine room. And in the process, I could have damaged fluids of some sort or another in the way of like engine fluids, or a through hole, which could have either caused an engine failure that was unknown, or a through hole that caused the boat to sink.
That's property damage, that's not liability coverage.
That's
You
still-
you didn't have property coverage prior to that.
I'm not saying whether we did or did not.
Okay. You don't have it. You would not have property coverage for a situation. As it stands right now. I'm sorry, you had one more, you raised your hand, and you had a follow-up to your question. I don't want to cut you off.
No, he's covered it.
I guess just to follow up on that, is that the boat that you were invited, is the way you're phrasing it, to come on to, their insurance would be the one covering whether he fell in the hole
Yeah,
or
yes,
he got tripped into the hole. If it goes
absolutely.
back
They would
to-
cover his injury.
It goes back to the owner's policy.
Correct.
And if that owner has no policy,
Yeah, then it's your own personal insurance that would cover that. It would be similar to you going to, it would be similar to going to a friend's house and the concrete is uneven and you trip and fall on it. Do you need your own insurance for that? It would be the homeowner's insurance for that. It's a similar situation. So on the water training, will the USPS ABC develop a database of qualified boaters who will be covered by the insurance. I think they already have that database. And if you become certified and qualified to do that, we can add you to that particular policy. That's not an issue. Again, there are parameters to what we're doing. It's not broad and vague. Do vessel examiners have, I think we've addressed this. General liability. This one has several questions, so the vessel safety check certified instructors, do we have to approve these instructors? We do not, they go through underwriting. If they see something on an MVR that doesn't look right, they'll ask us to explain it.
Explain what MVR means.
Motor vehicle record. So usually you're boating, if you receive a ticket on the lake or on a waterway, it's usually connected to your motor vehicle. It appears on your motor vehicle record as well, in many states.
If I could, there's some feedback that we are not telling you what exactly is covered, what is not. We are trying with the questions to do that. But let me say, first of all, we have, and Jeff can chime in here, we have professional liability for your teaching. If somebody sues you that you taught me wrong and you caused me to have an accident, we have professional liability for that. In that professional liability language, it also includes, it says specifically VSCs. So for a VSC, you would be covered for the professional side of it, in case you told somebody something wrong and they or whatever. Now the form itself, and everybody needs to get the new form, is also very specific about that. Look at what the VSC form says that the individual is signing. It says specifically you are not a real inspector, and that it's only for this point in time. And 2 hours later, you go out, you don't take your life jackets, you drown. It's not on the VSC. Look at the form, okay? Hold on a second, Scott.
What form? You mentioned the form. What form?
The VSC form.
VSC, vessel safety check?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes, okay. Yeah, the actual, and look for the new one, because I understand the Coast Guard has a bunch of old ones they want to use up before they print it. So you may have to print the new one. But I would highly suggest you print the new one because it has very specific language around what you're responsible for and what you're not. And the individual you go aboard signs it. Okay? So back to the professional liability. Those are a couple of things that I know definitely. The teaching and all that sort of stuff is covered. General liability right now is premises coverage for your classes. Does that make sense? And to get that premises coverage, you go onto the website, there's a form that you fill out and you send it to Jeff, not to me, to Jeff. And it gives you the address there, document request at courinsure.com. Jeff looks it over and decides is this something that is covered or not. But in particular right now, you must give him the address of where you are teaching your class or classes. You have them in multiple locations so that he has, because it's premises coverage. The premises coverage for general liability. So you must have it listed, right? So that's pretty much what general liability is. Somebody trips and falls while you're having a class. That's pretty much what it covers right now. Okay? Beyond that, then we have the new, the boat show package. If your venue, you don't have to have one unless the venue asks you. If they're saying you must have a certificate of insurance or named insured, send that same little form in to Jeff that's on the website, and he will send you back your COI once he's looked it over. If you're having a Christmas party, if you're having a boat parade, all of those other kind of things that fall outside the scope of, in general, what we do, then you must send those special requests to him. He will let you know whether or not it's covered or whether or not you need to acquire some specific event coverage. All right? So, and you know what the cost might be. Now, you don't have to use this company. We would like for you to, but there are plenty of other places we sent around originally that will tell you or quote you event coverage. All right? And a lot of the other things, we are working on a waiver so that, for instance, for a BSC or a kayak training or whatever is going on, that the law department can give you. Now, the problem with those is we're going to have to establish some repository to keep those in the event you need it at some point as evidence in court. All right? We do know some states do not require you to have boat insurance, but guess what? If you are a VSC and you ask that person before you come aboard, do you have insurance? They don't have insurance. I personally wouldn't do a VSC for them. That's going to be up to you to decide once you, as a VSC, am I going to accept that liability or not? All right? So those are the kind of things in the common sense about where is the actual liability that Jeff is trying to help us with and show us. So those are things I know are covered. We recently found the on-the-water marine coverage for certified trainers who do HOT and BOC events. And there's a process for doing that. Sean Boyd is going to be putting some stuff up on his website, but you have to submit a sailing resume, your driver's license to make sure you never had a DUI or something like that, and the area where you're teaching, all that information, and then you are approved and you have marine liability for that. We are looking at some of the other one-offs as far as like cooperative charting. If you're on the water, it's your boat insurance. If you don't want your boat insurance to be subject to some kind of issue, don't go. Don't use your boat. Your boat insurance will cover you, all right? If you're doing a land side, like the geodetics, we're working on a waiver for that also. So if somebody turns their ankle or whatever, maybe a waiver would be most. So those are the things I know specifically are covered. We are doing so many things, you guys are out there, that the list of what is not covered, I couldn't put on the website because of the things we're learning you guys are actually doing that. Some of you are very generously going and cutting your grass for descendants of enslaved peoples as a repatriation, and is that covered? Well, no. What does that have to do with USPS? So the list is so long, but Jeff, if you send in your request to him on those forms that are available on the Treasurer's website, he's going to let you know and give you some advice. Is this something that is really covered, or do I need a specific event policy for it? So sorry, Jeff, but here you go.
No, you're right.
Okay.
Thanks for clarifying some of what I said. I'm going to continue with some of these questions. If you pay rent for an island for $1, can the squadron get a certificate? I mean, what are we doing on the island? Probably not. If we're teaching classes, we can have that discussion, but we can't cover a whole island for general liability. We don't know what's going on. The state has island cleanup program. Our squadron adopted 3. Are we insured? No, like Shirley said, all these one-off things, we can get you coverage. And if you were cleaning up for a day and you were going to an island, if it was $50, I would be shocked. But do we need that coverage? Because you're just going to get general liability. So it's not going to cover you for injuries. It's going to cover you if you injure somebody or do something to injure somebody. It's not going to cover property. Are you covered for a squadron development course?
Squadron development course.
Not an actual course.
Oh, no, yeah. I mean, we could get you if you're teaching in a specific place, we can get you the premises liability for that particular class, but your course material will not be covered under the professional liability. All right, Christmas boat parade at night with the city does not provide insurance. So we can get you boat parade coverage. Again, it's inexpensive, but it gives you that layer of coverage. Coverage for a squadron building, meetings, no. Now, if you're teaching the courses there, it would be limited to the courses while you're training, while you're teaching those courses. This is exactly how we ended up where we are today. Your previous company paid out an $800,000 claim for somebody who was supposed to be using that location to teach classes, but gave the keys to a relative who had a function in that facility, and 2 people were shot. Okay, so this is the exact reason why we are not. We need to make sure that we are covering you guys for what you do. That could have been catastrophic had they not paid the claim. And I'll tell you, if they paid the claim, we discussed this thoroughly. They paid the claim because their policy was probably too broad and too ambiguous, and it left them open to other stuff, so they cut the check, took a signature, and canceled the policy. So these are the things we're trying to prevent. And look, if we would have gone 2 more years on that current policy, we would have been here at some point. So we're here now, and we're trying to figure it out. And I believe that National and Shirley and the law team have done a great job in getting most of what you need covered.
Can I follow up the example that you used about
Yes.
going to cut grass? That was our squadron going to do that.
Yeah.
It was community service. We requested that. We informed you that we'd have 6 boats, 21 people. It would take approximately 4 to 6 hours, and we were quoted $1,500 for the one day. She just told me they were quoted over $20,000 for a night boat time parade, Christmas parade. So
That quote didn't come from me.
no, it came from you.
That quote did not. I did not quote a boat parade.
No, 20, the 1,500 came from you, came from your organization. Is that?
I gave with, well, tell me what you were doing again?
It was the Hilton Head Squadron.
Okay.
We worked with the Tefusky Island Gaelic community, it's an ancestral community. They're trying to clean up a lot of the old historical properties. So we take them on as a community service to help go over 2 or 3 times a year. We were going over, I think it was scheduled to be in March. We asked for the event insurance, recognizing that we needed to have some skin in the game in this. We were expecting a nominal price, and we were shocked when we got $1,500 back, so we had to call the community and tell them we couldn't do it.
No, I can tell you that you didn't get an official quote, because I did not quote that. You had, somebody asked for a ballpark, but tell us what you were planning on doing. Tell me how many people you were going to transport, what you were going to do, and what was going on.
6 boats, 21 people. We were going over there. It takes about 45 minutes to get there. We allocated 44 hours to go through, help clean up the vegetation that had overgrown the cemeteries.
Right.
We were not disposing of any of the product, getting back on the boats and going back in. So we allowed 6 hours.
Okay, so let's think about that really quickly. You're taking 6 boats and 21 lives, right? On a boat to an island. They're going to clean up. They're going to use machinery. What are they going to use to cut the vegetation down?
Weed whackers and clippers.
That sounds pretty risky to me. And I think I gave you a ballpark, but it wasn't an official quote. So if you want an official quote, I could get that for you. Again, folks, these are things that when you're looking at insurance, you're talking about risk. There's a large risk with transporting 21 people. Now you're responsible for 21 people. I would say, that would be something I would probably try to shy away from.
So you're telling a boating organization transporting people on the water in a boat is too risky?
And using machinery that probably people never used before to clean up an island. Yes, I would say that's pretty risky. From the insurance perspective, it's risky.
What about the people that ask them to do it? They're not responsible.
Well, yeah, and that's something I would say. I would say, hey, we'll do this, but and have whoever owns that property sign a waiver stating that you're not responsible for anything that happens on the island. Yeah, I mean, yeah. Again, we have to talk about transferring risk. And these are situations where you can tell them, we can't get affordable coverage for this. Do you still want us to do it, and are you willing to waive any of the risk? And whoever's getting on that boat would have to waive that as well. All right. So let's talk about additional insurance, because that question came up. So when an establishment asks you for a certificate of insurance, sometimes they just want to see that you have proof of insurance. We can provide that. Some establishments will ask you to be named additional insured. Okay, that is a larger risk for you guys and for the insurance company, because now you are taking on you're being first in line. Okay, so you're defending them. It's fine. We can do that, but let's only do that if they're asking for it. Some places, and if you give them a little pushback, say, I need a certificate, without being named additional insured, they'll take it. Everybody wants to transfer the risk and the liability to somebody else, and that's what they're trying to do with that. So we can provide it, we will provide it, if it's absolutely requested, yes.
Can I follow up on that?
Sure.
If you rent out, if we're teaching a class somewhere, whatever it is, and they don't ask for a certificate of insurance, we don't come to you to get it, but then the squadron does something that they would be liable for, are you then going to say, well, we didn't give you a certificate, so you're not covered, and then they're going to come after the squadron?
So give me an example that you did something that you weren't supposed to.
Whatever is covered. We did something that normally would be covered, but we don't have a piece of paper from you saying, we've approved this event.
Well, if you're teaching classes at any location, I would suggest that you ask for a certificate of insurance, okay? Because that would cover you for, again, like Shirley said, we've narrowed this down to premises. So if you're teaching at the KFC hall, even though they don't ask for a certificate of insurance for teaching the classes, we should list that on the policy so that you have coverage for what you're saying.
So get it, but don't give it to them.
I mean, if you're teaching a class, in order for you to have coverage, we would need to put that location on the policy.
So what I just heard you say is every year when we do our education class schedule for the year, we should take all of those and send them in to get it documented that this is our annual schedule.
Okay.
So you are aware that whether we request a certificate of insurance from you or not.
If you're teaching classes at a location, we need to add that location to the policy in order for you to have coverage. If you go outside, if you do not let us know that you are teaching a class and something happens, then you will not have coverage for it because we've narrowed it down to the premises.
Okay, we have time for one more question, and then Justin will wrap up. So way in the back.
Can you speak up?
Real quick, as far as the location information you need, that's a one-time good deal. Like we teach classes at a community college, we teach classes over at church, or hospital training room. As long as we let you know where the classes are being taught, then we can have coverage for our classes whenever they may need help. Am I understanding that correctly?
That is correct. Now, the more information, the better. If you want to list, hey, we have 3 classes in March, we have 2 classes in May, more information is better. But yes, you are correct. You will have coverage for the year with that certificate at that location. Now, every year we will have to get a new certificate, which if is all we would need at that point next year is for you to say, hey, we need a policy, we need a certificate for the same location for the same dates, and we would just send it off to you.
Okay, thank you.
I'll take one last one because she's smiling at me.
Well, I wrote it on a card, but,
I may have not gotten it, I'm sorry.
So I'm Linda Martin from the Everett Squadron,
And once a year, we go to the local swimming pool and we teach the children about life jackets and cold water. And we have been requested by the pool to bring a certificate of insurance. So we're just wondering if that type of event would be.
Yeah, so the question was, they go to a local pool and teach kids about life jackets, once a year, is that correct? Yeah. Under the current policy, no. But can we get something for you? Yes.
At a cost?
Yes.
At a cost?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah. And again, there are probably thousands of things that you guys all do individually that, in all reality, you cannot expect to have a policy for all of these things. It's just, it doesn't make sense. It didn't exist previously, despite what you believed, and it doesn't exist now. It would just be completely astronomical to take everything that you wanted and get it covered. The organization would cease to exist. So, I appreciate your time, I appreciate your patience. I will be around all weekend. Just make sure you don't come up behind me and hit me with anything. At least let me see it coming. So, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. This concludes this